Hello guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be setting up this simple character customization system that you see here using the new Mutable plugin inside of Unreal Engine 5.5. Mutable is a brand new character customization system that allows you to set up customizable objects for things like your character mesh, your clothing accessories like shirts, jackets, boots, and more. And with these customizable objects, you can customize things like the color of the outfit, you can remove clipping of the mesh faces, you can optimize your character mesh and bake things like the textures and much more. So in this video, I'll be showing you guys how you can set up your own character customization system using the new Mutable plugin inside of Unreal Engine 5.5. We will first start by setting up the customizable object for our character, and I will teach you guys the basics of using the new Mutable graph. Then we will set up things like the character blueprint that will tie together our customizable object with the character blueprint. And finally, we'll add a simple widget that will have some simple customization options so we can modify our character's outfit at runtime. And if you guys end up enjoying this tutorial, make sure that you hit the like button and also consider subscribing, because I will be making a follow-up video showing how to remove the character mesh clipping that you see here in a future video. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button because you do not want to miss out on that future upload. Also, before we get into the video, I want to quickly tell you about today's sponsor. Have you ever dreamed of making your own video game? Are you tired of watching millions of YouTube tutorials that don't teach you anything? Well, I was in your same position many years ago, and so that's why I created the ultimate Unreal Engine 5 multiplayer survival game course. This course will teach you step by step how to create a Steam multiplayer survival game inside of Unreal Engine 5 from complete scratch. You'll learn how to create a drag and drop inventory system, a crafting system where you can craft different types of tools and items. We'll create a harvesting system and gathering system where you can chop down trees, you can mine rocks and pick bushes. We'll add a complete building system where you can build a base and a raiding and clans or tribe system so you can raid other players. We'll even add this open world map and show you how to host the game on a server on Amazon Web Services. This course is jam-packed with over 250 course lectures and over 70 plus hours of content to help you get started on your game development journey in Unreal Engine 5. And I made this course because it was extremely hard to get into game development because there was no course like this that shows you start to finish what it takes to make a game. You can pick up the course right now on my website, smartpoly.teachable.com, or click the top link in the description below. You can get the course right now with a big discount. The price of the course will be raised later on, and you don't want to miss out on this limited time offer. So take your game development skills to the next level and check out the course, link in the description below. So the first thing that you'll need for this tutorial is you'll need to download the official Mutable sample project from Epic Games. So I'll leave a link to this in the description below, but basically you want to add this to your library. And once you've added it to your library, you'll want to go ahead and search for the Mutable sample project. If you don't see it here, you'll want to refresh it, but once you have it, you'll need to create the project, and it will download the project. And also, we're going to create a brand new project, so go ahead and launch Unreal Engine 5.5. And then we want to create a third-person template, and you can name this your character customization, and just click create. So now that we have our brand new third-person project, we want to go and open up the Mutable sample project. So again, you want to go ahead and create the Mutable sample project and open that up. So I have mine opened up over here, and basically we're going to get the outfits from here in the base mesh and migrate it over to our other project. So in the content folder, you want to filter by skeletal mesh, and we're going to take the base body of the character, and we're also going to take things like the jacket. So just hit control while you're clicking. So we have the base body, the jacket, the pants, as well as the boots. So these are all the different meshes that I'm going to migrate over. So I'm going to right click and asset actions and click migrate. Then we're going to go ahead and click OK. Then you want to go ahead and navigate to your destination project. And so in my case, I have my Unreal projects on my E drive. If you have yours set on the default drive, it'll be under the documents Unreal projects. But under my Unreal projects, I've opened up my character customization project and into the content folder and click select folder. Now we'll go ahead and migrate those assets into our new project. So now in our new character customization project, we should see a folder for character, and we have body. We have this base body character mesh. We also have things like the jacket right over here, this jacket B, and also things like the pants. So you should have all the meshes that we just migrated over. Now in here, I'm going to go all the way back up to our content folder and right click and create a new folder and just call this Mutable, and double click, open this up. And now we'll need to enable the Mutable plugin. So in our project, we want to go to edit plugins and search for the Mutable plugin. Go ahead and enable that plugin, click yes. It's still in beta, so note that things are still early in development, and we'll click restart now to restart our project. So now that we've restarted our project, we should have that plugin enabled. Now we can, in the content folder, mutable folder that we created, we can right click and add a new mutable customizable object. So if you enable the plugin, you should see this window right here. If you don't have it enabled, you're not going to see this. So now we're going to click on customizable object and add that. And now we've added our new customizable object, which is a customizable object, which can be anything that you want to customize, things like your character's body, the actual mesh. You can add customizable objects for things like jackets, different clothing accessories, or articles. But in our case, we're going to just create one for everything. So we're going to double click and open this up. And let's dock this up at the top. So in here we have the mutable graph, and if you're new to the graph, basically it's very similar to the blueprint graph, and where you can zoom in and out. You have different nodes that you can select and you can connect through different wires. And then we have a couple of windows over here for different various details. Down here we have the actual preview of our character, so it will populate when we update the nodes. And then up here we have things like the compile and save button. So first let's go ahead and set up our character mesh. So over here, we're going to right click and search for the skeletal mesh node and add in a skeletal mesh node. For our skeletal mesh, we want to select this, and in the node properties window, under the skeletal mesh, we want to hit the drop down and assign our SK base body character mesh. Then we want to scroll down till we see this pins section, and you want to click on the hide all pins, because we only want to specify what pins we want. In our case, we want to add the character's body and head mesh. So you want to scroll down to LOD0 right over here. And if you need more room, we can expand this. But basically, we want to find the LOD0 MI male head young mesh. And you want to make sure that it says mesh, and you want to click on the pin to expose it. We also want to find the body. So let's go, and up here we have the LOD0 MI male body young mesh, and we also want to expose that. So now that we've added those two pins, we should see those two new inputs. And now that we have those two pins, we want to right click and search for mesh section, because we want to add a mesh section. A mesh section will basically split up the body into different parts. In our case, we just want to get the head mesh along with the body mesh. So we want to right click and add another mesh section, and also plug in the body pin to this mesh section. So what you'll notice is it will automatically assign the material. So we have our MI male head young. So if you scroll over here in the node properties, you can see that it automatically assigned the body and the head material to these different sections. Now with these sections, we're going to combine it into a mesh component. So we're going to right click and search for a mesh component. And we'll need a mesh component to output our component to this components over here, so we can actually see it in our preview. So for this component, we're going to select on it and rename this to our body. Then we can take our mesh section and plug that into the LOD0, and then take our component and plug it into the components. And then one more thing, we need to set the body mesh. So over here in the reference skeletal mesh, we want to hit the drop down and select our SK base body. So now that we have our SK base body, we can plug this component into the components and hit the compile and save button. And we should notice in the viewport down here, our preview has updated to show the character's body mesh. So we added a very simple character body mesh. Now let's add some different clothing articles that we can customize and add to the character. Just like how we added the character's skeletal mesh, we're going to right click and search for the skeletal mesh node and add in a new skeletal mesh. In our case, in the node properties, we're going to select, say, our jacket mesh, and we've added our jacket over here. Again, we can expose only the pins that we need. In our case, we can do a hide all pins. And we only want to expose our LOD0 jacket B mesh, this mesh pin over here. Now with the mesh pin, we can add a mesh section. So you want to right click and search for the mesh section node. And we're going to go ahead and add that mesh section. And then we're going to take this and add it to the body. So we're going to search for add to mesh component. We want to add it to our body mesh component. So we want to rename this to body, because that is the mesh component we want to add it to. And then we're going to create a child object of this. So we want to search for a child object, add a new child object, and this will be named our jacket. So for the components, that will be our body component. And then finally, we're going to group this into a object group. So In order to group up things like our jacket, our pants, our boots, we're going to combine it together into a cloth object group. So you want to add a object group, and we're going to rename this to our cloth for our clothing. Then take the object and plug that into the objects array and plug the group into the children and hit compile. And now in this preview instance tab, we should see under the instance parameters, we have this new parameter for jacket. So if I click on this checkbox, you can see we now can enable or disable the jacket, and that will spawn in that jacket mesh that we've added in the graph. So now we're going to do the same exact process over here for things like our pants and boots. So I'm just going to fast forward through this part because it's basically the same. All you have to do is add the skeletal mesh node, assign it to the proper one, expose the pin, add in the mesh section, hook that up, and copy over the add to mesh component node, add a new child object and rename it according to the clothing article, and then plug that into the output for the object group. So I've done that a couple of times, so you can see I have the pants and the boots. And now once you hit the compile, we should see we have these instance parameters. So we have our jacket, we have our pants, and we also have our boots down there. So now we have our basic parameters, and now we've set up our simple customizable object. So now we need to go ahead and close out of here because we need to create a customizable object instance. So you want to right click and create a new instance, and that will create this new customizable object instance. Go ahead and save that, and we should see it now populate down here. Basically, customizable object instance is what allows you to customize the customizable object at runtime through the blueprint graph. So now that we have our customizable object instance, we need to go ahead and add this into our blueprint. So I'm going to be using the third-person character blueprint. So you want to go to the content, third-person blueprints, and take our third-person character blueprint, and let's just move this into our mutable folder just for easy access. But now we can double-click and open up our third-person character blueprint. And in here, we're going to head over to the viewport because we need to add some different components over here. So the components that we're going to add are for our mutable character skeletal mesh. First, let's actually remove this character mesh. So select the mesh, and we'll reset the skeletal mesh and reset the anim blueprint. We don't need those. And then we're going to select this capsule component and add onto here a new skeletal mesh and rename this to skeletal mesh space body. And then onto that skeletal mesh component, we want to search for the customizable skeletal component and add onto that skeletal mesh body our customizable skeletal space body. So now select that customizable skeletal body component, and in the details we can now set the customizable object instance. So you remember that asset that we created over here? We can go ahead and hit the drop down and select our new customizable object instance. Now for the component name, this will correspond with the component name over here, this body mesh component that we created in our customizable object. So we want to rename this to body, and then for the component index, that needs to be set to -1. So let's hit the compile button, and if you don't see anything update, we can reset the component index to 0, compile that and reset that to -1, and now you can see it updates the character mesh. So compile and save that. So now let's select our skeletal mesh body over here, and we can move this down, and we can rotate this 90 degrees so that it faces the proper direction. Then to set up the animation blueprint, we can use the animation blueprint and select our animation blueprint Quinn. And now we've set up our character blueprint. So if we actually hit play, you can see we can run around with our character. The legs are not animating, and that just has to do with the animation blueprint. So we can just fix that real quick by browsing to the anim class. That will pull up our animation blueprint. So let's open up this animation blueprint Manny and head over to the anim graph, and we can just unhook this control rig and just plug this in like so and compile and save. And we don't need to use the control rig for this case. We'll just keep things simple. But as you can see, that will fix our animations for the feet. So we have our simple character animating with our run animations. Now what we want to set up is when I press a key on my keyboard, I want to go into the customization mode. Maybe we can switch to a camera that's facing the front of our character, and we'll show a little widget that has some options that will change these different parameters in our customizable object, things like our boots, our jacket, our pants. So the way that we'll do that is through our character blueprint. So in here, we're going to add a simple camera component in front of the character. So let's just copy our follow camera, copy that and paste that on our capsule component. And we can take this and rotate this 180 degrees so it faces our character. And for the location, I'm going to input some values. So it'll be 230 on the X and 20 on the Z. So it's just in front of our player. Then select that camera, and in the details, we can search for auto activate, and we can uncheck auto activate. That way it's not the default camera that's activated. Then in the graph, we can set up some simple logic to enter into our customization mode. So I'm going to add an input, add the debug key Q. You could add an enhanced input action, but just to keep things simple, we'll add a debug key. Then we're going to do a check. We'll do a branch. A check and see we've entered the customization mode. So let's take the condition and promote this to a variable and rename this to customization mode question mark to see if it's been enabled. If it has not been enabled, we can set this to now true because now it is enabled. Then we want to set the active camera, so we can just get our follow camera and set active. We actually want to set that to inactive. Then we want to take the customizable camera, which is this new camera component, and set that to active. So we'll just set that one to the new active and then set our follow camera to inactive or uncheck the active right there. So compile and save. Now to exit out of our customization mode, we can copy and paste this up here and uncheck customization mode and unhook these and switch this around. So basically we'll set our follow camera to now active and our customization camera to inactive. So it's basically the opposite of what we're doing down here. Now we're also going to disable our character movement. So we're going to get our character movement component and disable movement. Also, we'll stop movement immediately. So we can stop the character movement. And to undo this, we just copy the character movement and set the movement mode back to walking and hook that up. Now, if you were to test this out, if you go ahead and hit play, if I press Q, you can see that we go into this character customization mode where we can see our character. And if I press Q, that will exit us out of that mode and go back to our play mode. Okay, so now what we need to do is add a simple widget on our screen that will have the customizable options that we defined in our mutable graph. So in our content folder, mutable, let's right click and create a new user interface widget blueprint of the type user widget and just rename this to W_HUD and then double click open this up. In here, we're going to add a canvas panel onto our HUD, and then we're going to add a border onto this. And we can scale this up, and this will just contain all of the different options. So select this border. In the details over here, we're going to change this brush color to a dark color or a dark tint and set the alpha to 0.5. Click OK. And we can anchor this to the left by clicking the anchor like so. And then onto that border, we'll add a vertical box. We'll search for vertical box and just drag and drop it on the border. Then we'll add some text. So search for text and drag and drop it. Select that text. We're going to set that to align center and just rename this to customization. So we can just, name this customization. That way the player knows that we can change things like the different settings. We can up the font size like so. And then let's go ahead and add some more things. We need to add a border onto the vertical box. Select that border. We're going to change the brush color to a dark gray color like so. And then into that border, we'll add a horizontal box. So drag a horizontal box and drag it underneath that border. And then into that horizontal box, we'll add a checkbox right there. And then we'll add a text into that horizontal box as well. So you should have a text and then a checkbox. So let's select actually this horizontal box and set this to center align horizontally, center align vertically. Let's select the checkbox and actually scale this up. So search for transform. And we're going to scale up the scale to 2 by 2. So it should look like that. Then we're going to set the padding. So search for padding and add a padding of 20. Let's select our text and center align vertically that and just rename this to our jacket. So we have our jacket setting right there. Now we can select our border, and with the border selected, we can add a padding of 10 all the way around. And then let's copy this border and paste it in our vertical box 2 more times. Select this other text. We can name this pants. And then this one can be our boots. Then we'll just rename these checkboxes. Select each one and rename this to our jacket checkbox. Then select our pants. This will be our pants checkbox. And then we have our boots checkbox. So rename that to boots checkbox. So compile and save and make sure those are all set to variables. Then head over to the graph of the HUD widget blueprint. We can delete all of those events on the graph. We don't need any of those. And simply we'll add inputs for each one of these different checkboxes. So in the variables, we should have these checkboxes. We can add an input or event for when we click on the checkbox. So if it's been checked. So let's add one for each of the different checkboxes. We have one for our boots, our jacket, and our pants. So every time that we click on this little checkbox to enable it or disable it, we're going to call an event in our character blueprint to update the outfit. So let's go to our third-person character blueprint and over to our event graph, and we're going to right-click and add a custom event called update outfit. And this event will have two inputs. So add two inputs. The first one will be a string, and this will be the parameter name. The second one will be a Boolean, and this will be the value. So compile and save. Now to update any of our outfits using the mutable customization object and the customization instance, what you want to do is get the customizable skeletal body component. So this is the customizable skeletal component. And in here, we set the reference to the object instance. So because of that, we can drag off here and get the customizable object instance. So get customizable object instance. And then from that reference, we can set a Boolean parameter. So set Boolean parameter selected option. And based on this, we can set the Boolean parameter based on the name. So say we wanted to set the boots, you would type in boots, and you could enable or disable the boots based on what you choose over here. So what we can do is just hook up the parameter name and the value, and now we can call this custom event from inside of our widget blueprint. So if we go to our HUD over here, we can get a reference to our character. So you can right click and get owning player pawn. That will get our character, and then we can, off of that reference, cast to our third person character blueprint. Of course, you could set up an interface if you'd like, but for the sake of this video, we'll just be using the cast node. Then we can call that update outfit event. And all we need to do in here is specify the parameter name. In this case, we're using the boots checkbox, so we're going to name boots. These parameter names are defined in our customizable object graph. So over here, this child object, these names, object names, are the parameter names over here on the right. So you want to make sure that they match the exact same capitalization, punctuation, the exact same context over here. Then for the value, we can pull the is checked into the value. So we want to copy and paste this over for our jacket as well. We can plug in the value and we can change the parameter name to jacket. Then let's copy and paste this one last time for our pants. Plug that in and rename this to pants. So compile and save. And now all we need to do is set up our widget so that this widget will be displayed on the player screen when we enter the customization mode. So let's head over to the third person character. And one other thing that I forgot to mention is after we update the parameter option, we also need to call another node, which is to update the character's body mesh. So the node we need to call is off of this object instance. We need to call the async update skeletal mesh async node. What that will do is it will update the character's mesh to load any appropriate changes. In our case, if we change a Boolean value to, equip the shirt or jacket or boots, we need to go ahead and update that so we can see the changes. So we're just calling that node. So now let's go ahead and create the widget. So over here, when we enter our customization mode, we want to go ahead and create the widget blueprint or our WHUD widget. So over here, we're going to call the create widget node. And for the class, we want to set our W_HUD widget blueprint. For the owning player, we need to get a reference to our player controller. So we can just get the player controller node right there. Then we're going to save a reference to our HUD. So take that and promote it to a variable. This will be called our HUD reference. Then with that reference, we can add it to the viewport so that we can actually see it on our screen. And then we'll need to do things like set our input mode so we can actually click on the different buttons. And also we want to show our mouse cursor. So we can, off of our player controller reference, do a set input mode game and user interface. And also we can, off of our controller reference, call the set show mouse cursor and hit that to true. So now with both of these nodes enabled, we should be able to click on the buttons and see our mouse cursor. Now to hide the widget, once we exit the customization mode, what we can do is just get our HUD reference variable that we saved over here. We can get that on the graph, right click and convert that to a validated get. So if it is valid, we can call the remove from parent node, which will delete it from our screen. And then we want to reset our input mode back to game and hide our mouse cursor. So what we can do is copy our controller reference and just set input game only. And we can flush the input and also set show mouse cursor. We want to set that to false so we can hide the mouse cursor. So now after we exit the customization mode, we'll destroy that widget and we'll hide our mouse cursor. So compile and save. So now we should have everything set up in order to test this out. So basically when we press the Q key, we're going to check and see if our customization mode is enabled. If it is not, we'll enable it. We'll switch to our camera, our character customization camera. Then we'll stop our movement mode. We'll create the widget, add it to our viewport. We'll show our mouse cursor. Then in our widget HUD, if we click on any of the different checkboxes on the screen, that will go ahead and cast to our third person character and call the update outfit for the specific outfit checkbox that they check. That will go ahead and update the parameter name in the customizable object instance and update the mesh, and we should see it update on our screen. So now let's go ahead and hit play to test this out. So if I press Q, that will update and enter the customization mode. You can see we now have our widget on the screen. I can enable our jacket, our pants, and our boots. And now you can see that updating our character mesh. I can disable that to remove any part that I don't want. And if I press Q, you can see that we can go back into our play mode where we can run around with our character, we can jump, and all that stuff. So that's a very simple character customization system. Now, one bug with this is if I actually press Q and enter back in, you'll notice that these checkboxes aren't checked. So in order to load whether or not we have certain articles of these clothing equipped, we can simply go into our HUD and add a new node called the event construct. So whenever we create this widget, we can just right click and get owning player pawn, get a reference to our character, cast to our third person character blueprint, and from there we can get our customizable object instance. So you want to get the customizable object instance, and from there we can basically load all of our settings. So we can get our Boolean parameter selected option. You'll want to get it for each one. So for the boots, you also want to get things like the jacket and also the pants. And that will return the Boolean whether or not it's been equipped or not. So you just need to set the boots checkbox, set is checked, and plug in the is checked. So you could just plug this into a sequence and just hook everything up like so. And now when you hit play, you can press Q and you can see that all of our options have been checked. So if I disable the jacket and exit out of there and go back into the customization, you can see that it's loading our proper settings. It's saving that and we can re-enable it. And if we go back into the customization mode, you can see that it will load all of the settings that we've enabled. So very simple character customization system using the new mutable graph inside of Unreal Engine 5.5. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to remove things like the character clipping. So you can see the character mesh is actually clipping, and we can actually see parts of the character's body mesh underneath. So that is one of the new features that the mutable plugin can actually handle for you. It can remove parts of the character mesh that are underneath the clothing that we don't need to actually see because this jacket is covering that part of the body mesh. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure that you subscribe for more future uploads. Also, let me know what you guys think about the new mutable plugin inside of Unreal Engine 5.5. Is this something that you may use in your future projects? Let me know down in the comments down below. And that's pretty much it for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.